So we have seen a hyperlink where if you go to the properties, right, we have actually we gave a navigation word which is our page 2.aspx, so which will actually directly go here. And you can see that if you go to events, there won't be any much events or hyperlocation. Like the main intention of your hyperlink will be a direct flow passing right into the next page. Right. So similarly, you can actually have a button using which you can actually go to the pages. So let me create a simple button here. So let's say, let me just go to the properties and say, go to next page. Right. So this is this button. Now we have two ways how we can actually redirect the page, right, using button control. We actually learn again how we can actually go to communicate data from one page to another page in our upcoming classes. But here let's see how we can actually propagate from one page to another page using a button. And here you can see there is an option called post by URL, right? Where you can see, let's say I'm going to select page 2.aspx, right, for this button. I'm not taking any event or anything for this, but I'm just saying there's a post by URL and it does it. Save it up and let me run this and see how it actually works. Right, so we have go to this page, click on this, now you can see it works to actually move from the current page to another page. Then how we have done is we have actually used active post by URL option. Fine. Now let's say the post by URL option we haven't used it. Right? So we'll go to source here. Then you can see it's a plain button we have here. Right? Now let's say I want to write something in the button click. Now yes, you can actually write through code also, where we can use something called response dot redirect, and you can provide the URL. Now you can provide the same URL, which is your page 2.aspx. Where you have a second button click and your response dot redirect, which means as soon as you are painting your response in one on button click post back page, right? So you are actually redirecting a complete response to another page, right? So this is something which will actually take your response to this next page. Let's run this and see. So click on this, now you can see it actually moves to the next page. But the only situation is that you can see that when you click on this go to next page, right, two things happen. One, the pushback event will be triggered, and the second thing is whenever pushback event is completing and the response is being painted, right, then it will actually trigger your redirect page. Right, so it actually triggers your page, then if you move to page 2. Right, so this is how the button click happens here, and you can actually get it. Similarly, if you take any other controls, right, you can actually move on. Let's say here, let's take an example of image button here, right? Where we are going to see, we have already seen the image let's say I'm going to take this and let me give some height as 50. Let's use this height 20. right? Where there is an image button I have. So there is a difference between image and image button. So image is a plain image which doesn't have any rendering events here. But when you go to image buttons, right, this is something which can have an event, right, where you can actually click and so in image button you have properties same as button. You can see you can have the post back to one. Let me take page 2. It's the post back to a log page button. So let's run this page here. I can see when I click on this, if you go to page 2, right? Now here, this will work same as the button. But the only thing is you're actually rendering the image into this
image.
And then you actually work.
Okay.
Right? So we can actually use image button. Similarly, if you want to create a click event of this, you can create. Now you see you have image button 1 and the event name is click. Where let's say I'm going to use the same response order event. And if we go, yes, we have many options to redirect the page, but for now, as we are checking out the controls, right, let's constrain ourselves to this. Right, let's run this. So we have run this. One second. Have we removed the page post back one? Let's remove this first, right? Because we want to go to before. So let's run this. So let's click. Now you can see it again goes to page 2, where whenever it is propagating to page 2, it again follows the same. So first the post back event will be happening, right? So after post back event, we have the response which is redirected to page 2. Right after post back event, page 2 will be rendered as such. Now this is how our controls normally behave. So these are some controls which we have in ASP.NET, right, which we normally use mostly. Now let's go to the next topic in ASP.NET, which is we have something called main application level events. This is important to understand here. Which is like what are different events which we have. We have seen some control events now, right? Which is, if it is a button, we have seen that yes, there are few control level events. So these are specific to control. But we do have something called application level events, where in general there are 3 level of events which can occur while running a page, a simple page. First is your application events. Second is your page events, right? And then your third is your control events. Right? So these are 3 level events which will be triggered. Right? So we'll actually check out what exactly they are and how we can actually track all the events. We have only seen the control events, but each and every control will have, specific to control, they'll have their own events. Right? When you say control, it's like specific to your control, they will have it. Events like on click or selection changed or multiple things has changed. Right? So these are about events. Now, even before this, we have to understand one more control we just forgot to cover, which is a radio button, which is very important control as such. Now, let's see how the radio button control works. Let me just try the radio button here. So let me go to properties, Now when we go to properties, obviously radio button is similar to, on properties it is similar to checkbox, but main difference is radio button is used just to select or unselect. Like mainly radio button, when we talk about radio buttons, we normally use group of radio buttons, right? To select among them, you can actually select only one, right? But checkbox is something where you can directly select, even if you have a single option, you can either check or uncheck the or the checkbox, right? So here, let's say, again I'm giving an option of colors. Let's say this is one simple radio button, right? Where you can also do your postpack, right? You can actually create postpack, and let's take this label to actually do some actions, right? For this radio button, you can see there are events checked change, right? When we say checked change, right, wherever it is checked, then this event will be shown. At double click on this, you can see we have a radio button check change, and let's say label 2 dot text is equal to, we have radio button 1 dot text. But you'll see some peculiar behavior in radio button. Let me show you that. So this is a radio button. Click on this, you can see very clear. Now, if you try to unlock it, right, it will not happen, right? Because radio button also select, right? How can we select? You should have a group of radio buttons, right, to actually unselect it. So that is a peculiar behavior of the button itself. So radio button itself. So that is, you can see that it is not being checked. Now let's see how to create a group of radio buttons as such. Now let's say I have one radio button. Now let me take one more, right? And now let's say this one I'm actually giving property as let's say for this one, I'm going to make it as orange. Right, there are 3 radio buttons we have, but they are not related, right? So in order to actually make these 3 related, right, so we have something called group name. So for radio buttons, if you do group name as same for any number of radio buttons, right, then they will get related. Now let's say this is color, group name is color for this. Let's say this is color. Now these 3 are related because they come under same group, group called your color. Right, now let's run this and see the behavior, and then we'll get back to the event trigger. Now you can see I select both, right? Now in this postpack happen, now I can select green, you can see, right now the video movement is happening, right, where I can select one of the 3, I can select one of the 3, right. Now based on the event you actually selected, right, we can actually have a postpack and we can actually show which radio button has been selected. Right. How can we just say that? Because here in code we have a property called the radio button object, right? Radio button object. So this option will give you whether radio button is checked or unchecked, and we can actually do so this is how your radio button actually works. Mainly grouping is something which takes a major playing. If you don't group it, right, if you let's take some other radio button here just to show, right, and just say this is some red and we forgot to group it. Let's run this. See what happens here. I clicked on red, but I clicked on orange, green, and Now you can see, your main selection option is happening here, but I can't make it again. So that's the reason why it's very important to do that. So this is all about your events, which is, the controls which is there. Now, let's get back to application level events here. Now here, let's start with application events. Now application events is the one which happens whenever application starts and during the progress of application, right? And during the integration of your startup of application, there are many things which actually works out. So let us see how we can actually create application level events, right? Now let me close on. Right. So now when we go to any of the ASP.NET application, right, we will have something called a global configuration layer or global class file where you can actually track your application. Now let me create one of them. I click on this and add a new item. So you can see that there is a file called global application layer. So for any application you can have one global application class. So in case of the ASP.NET project, it is not created by default, right? But you can actually create it. Now as soon as you create this, you can see all the application level events will get recorded here, right? So whenever it starts, application starts, you can see this is startup application, right? Again, whenever a request is authenticated or request is, your main request begins, or any error is, any error occurs in your application or when your application ends, is something where we are actually tracking your application ends. So in combination to application, you can see there is something called session start, session end, right? Events. What is the session start and session end? Now we have something called sessions in ASP.NET, which is a very important, state we have. We already seen in Viewstate, if you remember. We also have something called session state, where you can actually persist some data across pages for certain session, right? So for this to understand these events, before this event understanding, we have to understand different techniques to set or persist data across pages actually, right? So in this itself, we actually learn some techniques how we can actually persist data. The first way is a query string. We have something called a query string, how we can actually persist data. And we have second thing, which is the cookies. And the third one is session state. And the fourth one is applications. Right? So these are different ways how we can actually persist data. And anyways, we have already seen Viewstate, which is which persists data only till the current page. We'll actually see that part first, right? So as soon as you move to the next page, right, your actual data will be lost, right? And when you get back again to the same, then the data will not be persisted, right? Because Viewstate always be active and will be and will be live whenever it is moving across a single page, right? So let's check that out. So let me create a new page here. So call it as page 3. Let me create a new page and which is page 4. Right? Now here let me make page 3 as a startup page. Right? So page 3 is something where what I want is I want to process data. Right? And page 3, again we see separate Viewstate being created for this. Right now let me go back here and in page 3, we'll take the same example where we have taken a text box, right, and a button. Right? So in here, your page 3, you have a text box and a button. So let me double click on this button and let's take the count. Let's say we have a count here, which is 0, set to 0. And on each button click, what I want to do, I want to set the counter in my text box. So I'm going to use Viewstate again. If Viewstate, right, or let me say it is count is not equal to null, right? Then let's take the count option as your Viewstate of, right, where I'm gonna make it as a, right, where I'm actually converting a Viewstate object. But Viewstate is something which is a property of a page here, and you can actually say the key and an object. And whenever you're taking the value of object, you have to type +2, and then let's say you have comment ++, right? And again, once you make it comment ++, again save it to your Viewstate. So count, and then we have a text box, 1, and your text, something good, where we are actually checking out how actually Viewstate works. Right? And in page 3 itself, let's take another button, and so this button, let's call it as counter. Let's take one more button here, or let's say I want a simple hyperlink, let's say. So in this hyperlink, let me give navigation URL to page 4. Right. Now here, let me just say it as page 4. Right. When I click on this, we see again the same part here. Now, in page 4, let me take the same HTML, whatever we have used. And here, let me go to page 4 and use the same, right? Because this is exclusive again. So, but here, for this hyperlink, what we'll do, we'll actually navigate to page 3, back to page 3. So here, let's say, go to page. So this is page 4 and this is your page 3. Now in page 3, let's run this. So let's call it as this is page 2 to differentiate. Right, and let's say this is your page 4. Now first let's run this and see how it's working. Now I'm in page 3. Right? Now here I have a counter. Click on this, now you can see 1, 2, right? And it actually changes. Now immediately what I'll do, I'll go to page 4. Right? Okay. Page 4, we made a mistake, we took this particular, let me just run this particular, we don't have the input, right? We haven't completed our page 4, we'll come back to that. So let it open. your page, right, as soon as you move across pages, right, your view state will be collapsed. So in order to actually make your page 3 and page 4 distinguished, right, so let's set some different color for this page 4. Maybe. So we'll just do basically let's make it as it's not. Basically make it as something. Right, and go to page 3 and let's make the same change to this. Now we have an option here. Now you can see, okay, you are in a page 3, increase the counter, yes. If it is the same page, it continues, click on this, we are on page 4, right? And as soon as you go to page 3 again, now again it starts from 1, which means your view state will be collapsed. Same way, if you go to page 4, right, in your button, click here. Let me copy this code, right? Where I'm going to take the actual count, int count, which I'm using here, variable is equal to 0, right? So in page 4 I have a separate counter. So how many clicks happen in page 4 is something which is specific to page 4. And here you can see counter starts here, where I'm going to use something 7. Go to page 4. Now in page 4 you can see it's an exclusive counter I have, where my view state is different. And if you go back to page 3 again and click, you can see again it starts from 1. Why? Because the view state will be collapsed completely and it will start a new instance of view state object will be created for that particular key. Same as your new page. So in every page you can actually persist a view state only during that page is live. Right? So this is why your view state is page scope. When we talk about view state, this is something which is a page scope. Very important to understand. Right? And by default, all HTTP controls, right, I will have a view state enabled so that the data will be persisted. Right? Now that is the reason why whenever you go to home.htags, right? Now if you have any controls, you can see even if you are doing some postback events, right? See, the data is persisting here. Right? If you select something here, green, now we have done some postback. Now select here, we have done some postback, but you can see the data which you have selected will be persistent. Now I selected admin here, click on this, you can see the data will be selected admin, because for all the controls, right, you have postback even set. That's the reason why it won't be changed. Right? So that is something which is a view state of your page. Right? Now let's understand what is a session state. So before even learning producing a cookie state, let's understand this so that we can actually understand what is the difference between view state, session state and application state. Right? So for session state, let's create 2 pages again. Let me create page 5. And page 6. Let me have page 5 and page 6 here. And let me take the same code as the page 3, where I'm going to take this button and all. Right? So in my page 5, let's type the page 5 first, where I don't have this button click. Right? This is page 5. And you have a text box, you have a button, and you have a hyperlink which should be navigating to page 6. Right? Go to page 6. Now the page 5 is ready. Where we have actually taken it. And your styling of your tube, let's take the style of your tube. For your sources, also unique lists. Now in your page where I have a simple text box and a button, alright, and what I have done is I'm actually taking a simple hyperlink to go to next page, right, and in next page whenever I get back, let's see how whether my session is persisted or not, right. So similarly, let's copy the same thing, or rather let's take only hyperlink for now, which says, let's say go to page 5 here, and when we come back, let's see how it actually is working. And here let me just take a simple text box, and let's say this is page 6, and what I want to do is I want to see whether data persists when I come back to text box, page 6 here. Now in page 5, let's go back here and see what I can. Now here I use same count, right, and in my page 5 I'm going to use this counter. So here what I'm going to do here is, so in place of Viewstate I'm going to use a keyword called session property, right, and let's say I'm going to use some key called count. If session of this is not equal to null, then just say you have your counter So this is how we normally take a session, right? For actually retrieving a session, in case of Viewstate, right, you can actually reset with a session, and which means you are trying to seek a value whether your key in a session called counter is set or not. If it is set, yes, get the value and then increase the counter, right? And let's assign it to text box. And also persist the counter value to your session. See, now this is what you are actually doing, right? And your page load, let's do one thing. If it is not a post path, and what you have to do, I'll check whether the counter is not equal to null or not. If it is not equal to null, then I'm going to check text.one.text is equal to your session counter. If I have this, I just write this. So this is my page 5 I have. So let's run this. So initially, let's see if we go to page, we have to go to page 5, right? So let me make page 5 as the starter page. So here is page 5, click on counter, right? The counter is 6 now here. Click on go to page, right? And come back to page 5. Now you can see the counter will still be 6, right? So this will be persisted here. Now click on this, now you can see the counter starts from the 10, 11, 13, 16. Go to page 6 again, right? And come back and implement. Now you can see the counter will be 6. This is something which is your session. Now how it differs between sessions, we'll see how we can actually check different sessions. But before that, in our page 6, let's do the same exercise. So whatever you have done here, let me copy all the code here, page 6, go back, right? Now here again what we are doing the same, that we take this button click to page 6, we don't have a button here, right? So let me take this button from here. Right, where you have a button click. And in basics, we have a button click even where we are doing some session. Now, let's run this and see how it actually works. Now, page 5 and page 6 are, in design modes they are same, but only thing what we are checking is whether the counter is being set or not. Now let's click on this counter. You can see the count is 6. Go to page 6. Now you can see near page 6. The counter is 6 here. Increase that. Now you can see it is increasing from 15. Now here you are on page 6. I click on page 5. Now you can see the counter will be persistent. And when you click on this, which means the session is live. Right? Now, let's see what happens when you go across the sessions. What do you mean by across sessions? Let me copy this URL and let me open one more page here. Right? Now you can see when I open a new browser, right, and when I go to new page, now you can see, click on this, now you can see a separate counter started, which means the session here and the session in the separate browser tab is different. Right? Session is specific to the instance of browser we are actually for. Now click on this, say, go to page 6, you can see the same counter here, and click on this, again come back to page 5, you can see 9, right? You can implement it. Right? So same way, as soon as you go back here, I can see this counter will be implementing based on here. So these two are two different sessions we have. Now it can be across in the same browser we are doing, or it can be across both browsers. It doesn't matter. But how it actually works is the sessions will be exclusive when you create a new instance of browser and start doing that. But as soon as you open one session, browser session, right? Everything will be actually working as if you are actually in a same session, right? Move across any number of pages and come back, your session will be consistent. Right? So this is how a session works. And now, how does it actually stays in here? Now by default, your session lifetime is around 20 minutes. By default. Timer. Now you got time. Right? And we can also set a timer for the session. Right? So session timer we can actually set from our configurations basically, which is our web.com. You can see that part. Right? So if you keep your by default, if you are not using your application, right, and if you keep your application or browser idle for 20 minutes, and then if you start clicking on counter again, then again you start from 1 again, because the session will be expired. That is something which we normally call as a session expiry, because session have got some expiry. Right? Also, how are session values here, right? I mean session, when we create session, right? We have session counter. In this way, you can have any number of sessions for different keys, right? Now, all these sessions will actually be saved in something called cookies, right? So normally they are actually saved in cookies. How cookie works, we'll see that part, but normally it's a browser cookie. It's a normal browser cookie which we normally talk in our real time, where we have the data will be saved in cookies, and here the cookie we normally talk that, right? So they are the same cookies we're talking about. The session will be actually saved in a cookie. Now you can also make your cookie disable to actually make sure the session is not saved in cookie. Let's see these two things. So in here you can go to your web configuration. So for our project, what is the configuration file? It's a web.config. Right? So in web.config, you can actually go to system.web where I can create one more session state. See, this is my session state, right? Where I can create something called mode is in process, and we can have something called time. We have timeout. You see, this is something which is minutes. By default, it is 20 minutes. Let's say I'm going to make it as a minute. Right? So which means if you stay idle for 1 minute, any page, any session stays 1 minute idle, then that session will be expired. And it will start when you reactivate it again, you need to start a new session. And then you have something called cookieless. Right? Let's make it as cookieless. Which means should this this single line of configuration will actually change the complete way of working of session across all the pages, right? When we say cookieless true, which means we don't want any other session to use browser cookie, right, to save the state. But yes, even we don't use cookie, yes, the session will be saved, because whenever we say the session is saved in cookie, what exactly is saved? The session ID. For each session, there will be session ID will be created, and those IDs will be saved in a server, right? So that's the reason why all the sessions, whatever you're using, because the Viewstate is something which will be your Viewstate in your page, but session is something which is saved in server. So previous down with session ID, your data will be persisted, and your timeout, whatever you are saying timeout, right, is something which will be timed out in your server. So that is the reason why if you keep a session, if you don't keep a timeout for a session state, right, so you can actually imagine how many people will be connecting to your site, and if you make timeout as huge, a much bigger time, right, then your server may stack up with saving multiple sessions, right? But obviously you have to understand about the server, right? Server capacity. Right? So that's how it actually works. Now let's see, I've made cookieless as true, right? Let's see how my session is going to work now, right? So let me close my sessions. Let me run this. We'll now see even the session timeout, because we gave it as a 1 minute, right? We'll see that part. Now here, just imagine we actually made the actual session as cookieless, right? So as soon as we did that, you will see here how page URL changed, right? Let me show you that. Okay, this here. Now previously you had a URL in this way, where you didn't have this, and so this was the URL which you were using. But as soon as you now click on page 5, now you can see your session ID will be created. Now this is your session ID. Right? Now if you start implementing this, right, now you can see your, right, that session is working. Now let me open a new session of your browser, right, and let me copy this URL, which is my normal URL I have. As soon as I copy it, enter, right, see what happens if you create one more session ID. For that page, if you create new session ID, see, session IDs are encrypted, right? And as soon as you start getting the count, you can see it will start a separate session ID, and where the session is created, the session is created in your URL itself. The session ID is actually exposed, right? It will take the session ID and your data will be persisted, right? Now, let's say I'm opening one more browser here, one more new session here, right? Okay, I open one more new session. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this URL with the session ID in here. Now see what happens here. When I copy this URL, page 5, right, which is this session, enter. See, as soon as I do this, you can see as I'm using the session ID, I know that I'm actually saving my session ID here. But what I'm doing, there is only a simple change between the previous session of cookie, using cookie and cookieless. What is the difference? Only difference is that previously this cookie ID used to be saved in, the session ID used to be saved in cookie, but now the session ID is saved in your URL itself. If I use the same URL, you can see as I'm using same session ID, whenever it triggers server, right? In server, this session ID will be unique, and by press the session ID, it is getting the data. Now you can see, as soon as you click on counter, you can see with my value is 23 here for the session ID. Now get back to this page and see how it works. Now the actual session value is 23. Now click on this, you will see 24 here. Right, increase the counter here. Right, next it is 30. Get back to this page and click on this, you will see 31. Because I'm using the same session ID where now you understand that the data will be persisted across your sessions. Now let's see this part. Now I hope this page actually stayed more than a minute, let's say. When I click on this counter, see what happens. My session actually went. Now when I click again, now you can see my new session started here. Let me copy this and let me paste it here. See here, my new session is started because this session got expired. When it gets expired, now server will create a new session for you, and that new session ID will be persisted in your URL. Now, which means this ID will be different again. Same way, if you want to see, check out the old ones. I mean these two again, right? If you keep any one of them idle, not one of them, you have to keep both of them idle because you're actually using the same session IDs in here, right? Now I don't know whether one might have crossed for this or not, but when I click on this, oh yeah, it is crossed. Right? Again click on this, it went up. Now it will start from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and click on this, you will see different. Why? Because here, whenever your session expired here, right, and when you click, you're in the same session, and when you try to start counter, what happens? The new session ID will be created for this page. Similarly, anyways, I was using the same session ID here, but it got expired, which means the session is no more exist. It is not exist now, right? So that's the reason when I click on this now, a new session ID will be created for this again, which means we have 3 different sessions. Right? So this is how the session actually works, and it works across sessions only. Like if you actually try to make it across pages, no, it will not. Right? So this is something which is specific to session. This is something which is specific to the session, and when you go back here, maybe it will expire. Now you can see this got expired. Now it will start a session. Right? So that's how it actually works. Right? Now in the same session itself, you can go to page 6, you can see in page 6 again the counter is saved. Go to page 5, again saved. Across the session, the data is saved. So this is about your session state you have. Right? And you can see your session state, what we have made is we have actually made it as cookieless, and we have made the time out of the session to be a minute. Now we just made it as a minute because I just wanted to show how the expiry works, but in real time you may keep, as per your requirement, you can actually keep your session state. But make sure whenever, if you are using the session, if you don't provide a configuration, right? So by default it will expire in 20 minutes, right? But if you want, you can actually provide your session state and make sure you are not giving huge timeout if you are actually saving bulk data. Now see here in this session, that you can, as of now we are saving only a simple integer, but you can save any big object here, right? But if you are actually creating a big object, then your server, I mean the data will be saved at server side, right? Because your session is created at server side. Now that may stack up again, right? So that's the reason why make sure you're actually saving things like that. So this is the session state which we have here, right? And view state and different things like that. Right? So let's stop here for today. Right? Our session is session 4 now. And the next one which we are going to see is application state. We see this one which stays across all the pages and across all the sessions where application state will be persisted. Right? We'll see that part in our toolbox.